Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be going over the third and fourth days of Swiss at the Copenhagen Major. So just one more day of Swiss to go, and then we'll have the top 8 set up, the playoffs. Only 3 best of 3s left to be played before those playoffs, but a ton to talk about here. I didn't make a video yesterday, I wasn't able to, so got a lot more to cover today than I did in the previous one, so let's try to bang this out. My predictions were pretty dreadful on day number 3. I only got these last 2 correct, so 2 out of 8 is pretty bad. I would have gone with Nip, but I don't know, I was biased, so I went with Dark Zero because I have them in my fantasy draft, and so I wanted to root for them, and it's harder for me to root for them if I pick against them. I thought they could have won, but I definitely thought Nip was fairly heavily favored here just based on what I've seen out of them. Anyways, let's just go down the line and talk about the matchups. Very, very close win for W7M, but they take it in round 15 against Sonics. Definitely could have gone either way. Neither of these teams looked significantly better than the other. And FaZe versus Virtus Pro, also pretty close, 7-5, so max regulation. But I did feel like FaZe relatively outclassed Virtus Pro in this matchup. And again, close scoreline, but still I thought FaZe looked a good bit better. Maybe not like worlds ahead, but still much more so than W7M over Sonics there. So close, but I did get both those runs wrong. And actually chronologically, I think it was these middle 4 happened, and then these 2, and then these 2, just if you're curious at all. Scars versus D+. I thought there was more reason to go for D+. And certainly I was surprised that they lost this heavily. I don't know if these 2 teams have a history. One of them's from Japan and one is from South Korea, so they're geographically pretty close. I don't actually know if they played each other a bunch. But yeah, just based on what I've seen from them at the event, I was surprised that Scars won so decisively. And speaking of decisive wins, Wolves crush Space Station. This one was a big shock. And again, I wasn't super surprised to see Wolves win, but for it to be a 7-0, clutching my pearls there. SSG, they had a close-ish loss to FaZe, and they beat G2. Decent results. They're, of course, both 1-1. Wolves barely got the win versus M80, and they got crushed by Virtus Pro. So just having seen, a not close loss and a close win versus SSG, solid win, and then decent loss, it just looked like SSG were the favorite here, or at least they got a few rounds, but not the case. And then Nip versus Dark Zero. Dark Zero got 4 rounds on the board, but Nip was just the better team at the end of the day. G2 versus Liquid. This one was a bit of a surprise. I honestly, I don't know. I thought G2 could pull it out. Just what we've seen from G2 hadn't been super impressive yet. They lost their first game pretty decisively to SSG, and then they barely won versus M&M, but this is where, though, the world champions really woke up. Liquid, they took a close loss versus W7M, but they absolutely dismantled Revan, so I thought Liquid the favorite there, but G2 proved me wrong. And so again, that's these 6 incorrect. Pretty unfortunate for me, but what are you going to do? There were some fun games to watch, I guess, more or less, especially these 2, more so than the middle ones. M&M versus Revan. A little bit of a scare early on for M&M. Revan went up 3-1, but then Revan only won 3 more rounds for the rest of the series. 7-4, 7-2 wins for M&M on the maps. So yeah, just in the end, M&M turned out to be a pretty dominant win for them over Revan, eliminating them from the tournament, and M80 beating Falcons. This one was a bit of a scare. Falcons were up 6-3, so they had 3 map point opportunities on the first map, and in round 10, when they were down 3-6, Gomez on M80 got a triple kill with a C4 and then 1v1, maybe on time, but he got a 1v1 clutch regardless. And then M80, so they win that round, then they win the next 4 rounds in a row. So they went from down 3-6 to winning the map 8-6. And then I think they won the first 4 rounds of the next map, so they won 9 rounds in a row total. And then it ended up being like a 7-2, 7-3, 7-4, something like that on map 2, but still pretty decisively an M80 win at the end of the day after they won the lion's share of the rounds after being down 3-6. So a bit of a scare, but they get it done, and that eliminates MENA, that eliminates LATAM, and that leaves only APAC, North America, Europe, and Brazil in the tournament. Okay, on day number 4, the second day we're talking about here, Scars falling to Ninjas in Pajamas. It's a 7-2 scoreline. I wasn't surprised to see this at all. I would have been quite surprised to see Scars winning this. Sonics beating Wolves. They just look like way better team. This qualifies all 3 of these teams that we're going to talk about, actually. So Nip and Sonics and G2 are going to the playoffs as well. But yeah, Sonics just pretty well crushed Wolves. I mean, they got 3 rounds, but it wasn't especially close. And then even less close, G2 versus Virtus Pro. Virtus Pro gets the first 2 rounds, then G2 gets 7 in a row. And honestly, I really wanted to pick G2. I was a bit of a coward. Virtus Pro had their number recently. They won 3 of the last 4 maps that they played. So I guess they've still won 3 of the last 5 because G2 just gets the 1 win here. They played in EUL groups and Virtus.pro won 8-6, and then they played in a best of 3 to determine the top seed and the second seed out of Europe, and Virtus.pro won 7-4 on the first map, then they lost 7-8 on the second map, and then they won 7-4 on the last map. So again, winning 3 of the last 4 maps, it looked like Virtus.pro kind of had G2's number. I really had a feeling, especially after what G2 did against Liquid, that this was going to be G2's moment, but I didn't predict it, so that's my bad. SSG versus D+. SSG just clearly the better team here. D+ getting only 5 rounds. It was a 7-3, 7-2, or a 7-2, 7-3, so either way. Only 5 rounds for D+. They get sent home, leaving just 1 APAC representative in the tournament. M&M versus M80. This was probably the most exciting matchup of the event thus far. This has to be one of the longest best of 3s ever played on LAN and in general. They played 42 of the 45 possible rounds. It went round 15 first map, round 15 second map, and then max regulation, so 12 rounds on the third map. And there were also a bunch of, tech pauses, delays, rehosts, all this kind of stuff. So just time-wise, really, really long. Of course, if some online best of 3s are probably even more delayed. They're probably multi-hour delays, whatever. But in terms of just playing on LAN, both in terms of round played and time elapsed, it was just one of the longest ever. On the first 2 maps, M&M went up 4-2 both times, and then M80 brought it to, on the first map, I think it was a 6-5. I think M&M had 6-5 on the second map, and then of course it went 6-6 both times. M&M wins the 13th round in both matchups, so 7-6 scoreline for M&M on maps 1 and 2, and then M80 wins the next round, and then on map 1, M80 wins round 15. On map 2, M&M wins round 15. It's difficult. They both start with M. I hope I didn't misspoke at any point there. And then on map 3, M&M go up 5-1, so even better than the first 2 maps. And then M80, 4 rounds in a row, they bring it to 5-5, but M&M closes it out. Tyrant gets a 1v2 clutch in a post plant on the final round. Honestly, it felt like M80 choked that a little bit. They probably should have won it, misplayed a bit. Of course, Tyrant had an advantage of the post plant situation and where he's positioned, but there were 2 players and they sort of knew where he was. Anyways, however it happened, that is two NA teams down. I guess we didn't talk about Dark Zero yet. Liquid beating Dark Zero, I think it was 7-4, 7-1, so same thing as SSG beating D+. The loser only gets 5 rounds. Liquid was up 6-0 on the second map, and then DZ gets 1 round, and then it's 7-1, so absolute destruction. In terms of my predictions here, I got the G2 game wrong, and I got the M&M game wrong, so I got 4 of the 6 here, so definitely a lot better than my 2 out of 8 on the previous day. So at that point, yeah, just 1 APAC team left in the event. Half of the NA teams gone, 1 qualified for playoffs. So SSG has the opportunity, a pretty solid opportunity because of who they're playing here. So let's talk about the upcoming matchups. Yeah, SSG versus Scars. This should be an SSG win. They just took out 1 APAC team pretty handily. You would expect them to take out the other, although in the head-to-head, Scars did beat D+ pretty heavily, so maybe we'll see a bit of a surprise there. But I do think SSG the pretty heavy favorites there. M&M versus Virtus.pro. Off the top of my head, they didn't play in the playoffs. I don't think they were in the same group, right? M&M was in the other group with Wild, yeah. So I'll double check that and I'll put on the screen if I'm mistaken, but I don't think I am. I'm going to go with Virtus.pro here. I think they've looked better throughout the event. M&M has played more games because they were, well, not only because they were down 0-2, and so they've already played 2 best of 3s in Swiss, but they were also in phase 1, so they played some games there. They've been shaky at times and they've been good at other times. And I guess, they barely lost to FaZe. They barely lost to G2. They beat Revan pretty decisively, and then they barely beat M80, whereas Virtus.pro, a really good win against, pretty good win against NiP, and then a really good win against Wolves, and then a close loss to FaZe, and then a pretty bad loss to G2. I think if you just add it all up and take into consideration their histories as well, I'm going to go with Virtus.pro. I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see M&M win it. I don't know, they have the momentum, I guess, trying to make the comeback, whereas Virtus.pro went from up 2-0 to on a 2-2 record, but still it feels like Virtus.pro is the better team. I would expect them to win. And then finally, Liquid versus Wolves. This looks like probably the most exciting matchup. This one, has an APAC team. This one is 2 EU teams. This one has an EU team and a Brazilian team, so that's cool. We'll see if all 4 Brazilian teams advance. It seems likely. I wouldn't be clutching my pearls or anything if Wolves win this, but Liquid, I feel like, is the better team. They crushed Revan. They barely lost to W7M. They lost kind of badly to G2, and then they destroyed Dark Zero as well, whereas Wolves, they barely beat M80. They lost pretty badly to Virtus Pro. They crushed SSG, and they lost pretty badly to SSG. So I guess one close win, one really good win, and then two bad losses compared to Liquid's not so bad loss to Liquid, and one kind of bad loss to G2, but still, they got 3 rounds. It's not like they got 7-1, 7-0, whatever. And then really good win here and a really good win here. So I think all things point Liquid. I would be a little bit surprised, but again, not flabbergasted or anything if Wolves took that. So yeah, that's going to do it for me for my predictions. I guess I have SSG, Virtus Pro, and Liquid. I got the 3 teams on the right. I feel like those are all either pretty heavy or at least somewhat favorites. Do let me know your own predictions. Only 3 games coming up. And what matchups would you really, really like to see in the playoffs? Okay, yeah, that's going to do it for me. Comment, like, subscribe, all of that stuff is really appreciated. And with all that being said, catch you guys in the next one.